Welcome to the show, Education in the Community. I am your host, Reverend Robert L. McKnight, and joining me as co-host today is Miss Laura Sall, a familiar face here in Education in the Community. We shall be discussing a friend of mine or a friend of ours, the late Michael Lange, which name you should be familiar with as he has hosted numerous shows here in Education and the Community, as well as Oakland Is. And so welcome, Miss Sall, to the show as co-host. As co-host, we shall be interviewing each other about the life and times of our friend Michael.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. But before we get started, we have some video on Michael. And we'd like for everybody to join us in enjoying the videos.
But how do we meaningfully begin to bring about a change that will uplift all of humanity, and we can begin to constructively build this civilization?
Yeah, well, first, the biggest problem is that people don't feel empowered, so they protest like we are seeing these protests where cities burned in reaction to Dr. King when he was murdered, Medgar Evers. You know, we see that the only tool that the community has is to throw something at something, maybe with in a bottle with gasoline in it, or whatever the case may be. And so we're seeing these protests happen, and we're talking about how do we make that change. And yet, technically, through the vote, we are the people, and the people have the power. And so we have these mottos, you know, power to the people, all of those kinds of things. But how do you transition a street protest into sitting at the table with the mayors or with the police commissioners and things? We've separated the church from the state. That was a huge separation, because we're talking about a spiritual transformation in the state. But we've separated the church out. And it doesn't matter if it's Yahweh or Jehovah or Allah, whatever we pray to that is the greater good. We know that that's probably where the best solution and answer is, that I am my brother's keeper, because that's what's known on all four corners of this world that we live in. So part of it would be, you know, you do sensitivity training, we talk about the touchy-feely kind of stuff. I would prefer something along that order than a street protest. When I watched the 99 percenters occupy Oakland, they were angry because they're not part of that 1%, or that they're not inclusive, not being heard. So what we're saying is that what we need is to be able to put our feet under the table and talk to our city council reps, talk to our police officers in our neighborhoods, do some community work. I mean, we could create opportunities. The Police Activities League is a good example, where we see a police officer not with a gun and a uniform, but we see them dressed to play softball or volleyball or soccer or something. You know, we need more of those kinds of things that get at the spirit, that this is a good person. Yes, they are the police officer, but did they make the law? No. Do they have to enforce the law? Yes.
Now,
that somebody else made.
What I remember when I think about Michael as a friend, I remember the Miracles, a group with Smokey Robertson, and at the eulogy, remembering Melvin. Can you think of Melvin's last name? He was the bass. And Smokey Robertson did a tune that he wrote, Really Gonna Miss You. And I want to share these lyrics in remembrance of Michael with you, the audience. It says, really going to miss you. It's really going to be different without you. Time came when you had to go. For the rest of my life, going to be thinking about you. Yes, I am. I'll miss you, my buddy. I'll miss you, my friend. I promise my love for you will never end. In your finest hour, I was there with you, and without you, things won't be the same. But there's a higher power that we answer to, and you heard him calling your name. Really going to miss you, everything about you, your smiling face. I know you would want us all to be strong. I'll miss you, my buddy. I'll miss you, my friend. I promise my love for you will never end. Really going to miss you, Michael. And we know that as long as memory lasts and the love keeps burning for you in our heart, you will always be with us. Because, Laura, we believe culturally that eternal life is eternal memory and eternal love. So as we keep the memory, as with Malcolm, as with Martin, they're very much a part of our lives today. Absolutely. Because we pause not only once a year during their birthdays, but throughout the year we speak of both of these two individuals. And as long as we speak of Michael and his works, as long as we keep the fires of love burning in our heart, Michael will yet be with us. What is it that you remember about Michael Lange?
What I remember is how wonderful he was, and how giving and open, and he was, from the very first time I met him, he was like a brother. And everybody that I've met from that time I met him, it was as though they were all related to him as well. And in how he performed his work, how he directed a play, as well as how he just moved in a room. You knew that he was somebody special. And for me, it was from day one, I knew that he was like a brother to our director, Edmund Broussard, and he was a brother to everybody else, and he became my brother too. Can you remember how you met him?
Michael and I met, I believe, in the late 70s or the beginning of the decade of the 80s. And we were both teaching at the Merritt College Educational Center there on 84th, I believe it was, 84th and East 14th Street, extension courses from Merritt. Michael was teaching a course in African American Studies. I believe he was teaching a drama course in African American Studies, and I was also teaching within the Department of African American Studies. And so we were colleagues there for at least 2 or perhaps 3 years. And then we met at a community-based school, a program. Objectives of that program, the goals were to teach employment skills and how to interview to students. And Michael and I, and he was the lead teacher, and I operated out of one of the facilities then on East 14th, now on International Boulevard. And Michael was the lead teacher there as we rehearsed students for interviews, as we tried to sharpen their interviewing skills and shared with them many of the professions that we recommended to them that they possibly could look at. And one of the things I remember that Michael shared with them is that they should not look for a career, but they should choose a path for life. That's something that they had a passion for, something that they truly love. And he would always tell them, if you love what it is you are doing, you will never have a job. And out of the universe, your needs will be provided for. And over again, I think almost daily, he shared this thought with the students. Love what you are doing. Embrace it with your whole being. And this is how Michael approached his life work, acting on stage, producing, directing, as an educator, as a community advocate. He worked for the city of Oakland. Everything that Malcolm did, he did for and out of his love for the people.
My goodness. And it sounds like there was something about the two of you that kept coming back around, and you kept meeting up at the same place. Jerry Lange, Michael's mother, said to me that sometimes there are souls that existed together before this life, and then once they come forth in this life, they join together again. And it sounds like you and Michael came back together again and again and again, meeting each other at various times in your past life as well as in the current life.
Yes, after Michael left Merritt College and the program ended in the community, I didn't see him for a few years because he went to San Jose State to teach there. And let me see, when did we meet again? Dr. Barbara Cannon, one of the hosts on education in the community. At that time, she was hosting a program in the city of Oakland where she would call in individuals, invite in individuals from the community who were advocates, activists, etc. And she invited Michael and I together as guests on one of her shows. And it was as though we were tuned in to the same universal spiritual frequency. There was this spirit of agreement there in the studio. And so after that, our paths kept crossing over and over and over again. The director and producer of Oakland Is invited the two of us to come in and to do a show with him. And then Michael had invited me to his play. He had this marvelous one-man play on Malcolm and Martin. We're going to miss you, Michael. He performed that somewhere almost annually. And he would do readings from the speeches of Malcolm. And when I watched Michael on stage, he embraced that role of Malcolm the same way Denzel Washington did in Spike Lee's X.
Well, you know, when I first saw him perform, I recognized Michael, but I was hearing Malcolm.
Yes.
And when Michael shared how he became Malcolm in his performances, it made a lot of sense that there's that soul again connected.
Yes, yes.
And he definitely performed to the extent that you had no choice but to see Malcolm on that stage. And even when I saw a play about Malcolm, where they had a segment in the play where Michael performed as Elijah Muhammad,
Yeah.
he carried that forth. And I said, there is just something extra special in how he performs. You can't help but envision the person that he is performing as. And his talents just goes forth, and how he taught those who are performing now. And he wasn't just a director, he was also a teacher as a director. And I'm sure there are just numerous students out there who performed in his plays will continue to perform in a way that Michael taught them to be that part that they were performing, and to be that person, and to embrace the spirit of the people they are performing as, because Michael did that very well. And so when you would see him perform, now this is someone that was your friend, your brother, and yet you would sit in the audience to see him performing on the stage. Did the same thing happen to you, that you lost sight of the man Michael and embraced the character that he was performing as?
It was difficult to see Michael Lange on stage. And again, you saw and you felt the spirit of the character that he was portraying. He was able to embrace that. And a part of that for our audience was Michael always prepared for the role that he was to play. He studied the life or the character, if it was fictional, of that person, and he became it. It was like taking off makeup and putting on a new wardrobe.
Yes.
You didn't see him. And I think a part of that was because it wasn't a job for Michael. It wasn't a career for him. It was a passion.
Yes.
He put his whole heart into what it is he was doing.
And he was the same way as a son, as a brother, as a friend. He put his heart into those around him, and he shared who he was and how he related to the people next to him, and how he related to those he loved. You could tell he loved his family, his mother, his brothers, his nieces and nephews. He was just that kind of man that everyone around him loved. And you expressed how we are as a people, as African Americans, and the services we have, our memorial services, and you shared about someone saying about the quote you mentioned about what they say about you when you're alive and what they say after you're gone. Would you repeat that, please?
Yes, a friend of mine, colleague, Dr. M.T. Thompson, used to say frequently that while you are alive, people will lie on you. But once you transcend, you're no longer here. At your funeral, they will frequently lie for you. And I was sharing with you that perhaps during the life of Michael, there were people out of envy and jealousy who might have lied on him. But now that he has made his journey to be with the ancestors, you do not have to lie for him, because Michael lived his eulogy.
Yes.
His life works and passion speak for him. He was an advocate of the downtrodden. He had the courage to speak truth to power, as he was frequently at city council meetings and other political and committee meetings. And I remember the campaign slogan of out of New York, Shirley Chisholm and Congresswoman Chisholm, who became the first serious contender, African American and woman, for the office of president. And she had a campaign slogan that said, unbought and unbossed. And so Michael never pursued the salaried position. And so consequently, he never allowed that to stifle his original creativity.
Something else you said that was profound to me was that his eulogy will be easy. Can you speak further about that? Whoever does his eulogy will have an easy job because he lived in such a special way.
And at the mentioning of his name, as we talked about his stage presence in the characters that he portrayed, Michael's spirit is going to be present. You will hear the eulogies, but you will see the Michael that you knew.
Yes.
And each one of us knew him perhaps in a different way. And so you don't have to search for something to say about Michael. You don't have to make something up. You could speak from your heart about the life that he lived. Michael always carried about himself that this glow, that this radiance, this light. He can walk into a room and immediately, if there was some hidden shadow lurking about, Michael's presence would light up the room.
Without him having to say a word.
Without him having to say a word.
Yes.
You could feel his presence.
Yes.
You could feel his presence, powerful presence. And Michael not only was a great artist, Michael was a powerful intellect.
Yes.
Michael could sit in either of these chairs and speak freely about any subject, whether local, state, or national, or universal.
Yes.
Whether political or spiritual. Michael always had something very profound to say.
Yes. And ironically, listening to what you just said, there were so many times that I saw Michael where he would just sit quietly.
Yes.
And he was very present with what was happening around him, but he would sit quietly. And then you see him on the other side where he would start to speak in these chairs, and he would speak profoundly.
Yes.
But then he would sit and just be quiet in other places, and you could hear and feel his presence, just as you just said.
Yes. It is said, there's a proverb that says that in order to be a good teacher, a great teacher, you have to be a better student than you are a teacher. And this I found in Michael, the fact that not only was he a great orator, a great actor, but even more so, he was a great listener.
Yes.
And he would take in everything that was being said. And he knew when to speak.
Yes.
And he had that gift, that talented of knowing when to be silent.
Yes. And although we are doing this show about Michael, I recognize that there will be additional shows because there is so much to cover about Michael. But I wanted you to speak about those that are currently in pain about our brother's transition. And as a minister, how some of us will be mourning in addition to celebrating who he was to us. Can you speak about how we get through this time?
Yes. When someone close to us has transitioned, it could be your mother, it could be a sibling, it could be a significant others. There are times and things in life that happens that we will never get over, but we must learn how to get through them. And so in the case of Michael, we will never get over his transition, but we can embrace his spirit. Now that he is gone, we can embrace his spirit, the things that we found so noble and lovable and admirable about him. And so we take them on, and rather than being devastated, we now become empowered because he had a place in our lives. Yes. And that spirit will live on through us. Yes, you are to mourn, so you can cleanse your system, let the tears flow. But then you are to celebrate the life that he lives. And so you are to pass it on to the next generation.
Yes.
And as we said at the beginning of the show, as long as the memory lasts and love lasts, then he can never die. He will go on. And maybe on the next time we meet, on the next show, we can look at another part of Michael's life, interview others who knew him, who worked very close with him. And maybe at some time in the future, you could have on your show his mother, Jerry Lange, to come in and to share, as she did Wednesday night, the day of Michael's transition of this past week. I want to thank you for sharing with us on education in the community. And to our audience, thank you for allowing us to come in and to share this hour with you in your home. So until next time, this is Laura Sall and Reverend McKnight bidding you farewell. See you again soon.